The Declaration of UOT. The policy of this lodge is independent devotion to the cause of theosophy without professing attachment to any theosophical organization. It is loyal to the great founders of the theosophical movement, but does not concern itself with distinctions or differences of individual opinion. The work it has on hand and the end that it keeps in view are too absorbing and too lofty to leave it the time or inclination to take part in side issues. That work and that end is a dissemination of the fundamental principles of the philosophy of theosophy and the exemplification in practice of those principles through a true realization of the self, a profounder conviction of universal brotherhood. It holds that the unassailable basis for union among theosophists, wherever and however situated, is to the similarity of aim, purpose, and teaching, and therefore has neither constitution, bylaws, nor offices. The sole bond between its associates being that basis, and it aims to disseminate this idea among theosophists in the furtherance of unity. It regards as theosophists all who are engaged in the true service of humanity without distinction of race, creed, sex, condition, or organization, and it welcomes to this association all the ones that are in accord with its declared purposes and who desire to fit themselves by study and otherwise to help to be better able to help and teach others. The true theosophist belongs to no cult or sect, yet belongs to each and all. Our devotional reading today is from the Voice to the Silence, starting on page 37. Thou canst create this day the chances for the tomorrow. In the great journey, causes sown each hour, bear each its harvest of effects. For rigid justice rules the world. With mighty sweep of a never-erring action, it brings to mortals lives of weal or woe, the karmic progeny of all of our former thoughts and deeds. Take then as much merit as in store for thee, O thou of patient heart. Be of good cheer and rest content with fate. Such is thy karma, the karma of the cycles of thy births, the destiny of those who in their pain and sorrow are born along with thee. Rejoice and weep from life to life, chained by thy previous actions. Act thou now for them today, and they will act for thee tomorrow. 'Tis from the broader renunciation of the self that springing the sweet fruit of final liberation. To perish doomed to see, who out of fear of Mara refrains from helping man, lest he should act for self. The pilgrim who would cool his weary limbs in running waters, yet dares not plunge for terror of the stream, risks to succumb from heat, and action based on selfish fear can bear but evil fruit. The selfish devotee lives to no purpose. The man who does not go through his appointed work in life lives in vain. Follow the wheel of life. Follow the wheel of duty to race and kin, to friend and foe, and close thy mind to pleasures and to pain. Exhaust the law of karmic retribution. Gain cities from thy future birth. If son thou canst be, then be the on the planet. If thou art debarred from flaming like the noonday sun upon the snow-capped mount of purity eternal, then choose only a fight, a humbler course. Point out the way, however dimly, and lost among the host, as does the evening star to those who tread their path in darkness. Of fundamental propositions.
The Secret Doctorate establishes 3 fundamental propositions. The first fundamental statement is that of a metaphysical one absolute. It is the omnipresent, eternal, boundless, and immutable principle on which all speculation is impossible, and it transcends the power of human conception and could only be dwarfed by human expression. It is also referred to as unthinkable and unspeakable, and referred to as beingness rather than being. And it also can be considered as a foundation of the concept of universal brotherhood. The second fundamental assertion of secret doctrine talks about the universality of the law of periodicity, of flux and reflux, of cycles, ebb and flow, day and night, life and death, and sleeping and waking. The third fundamental proposition talks about identity of all souls with the universal oversoul. And it describes the obligatory pilgrimage of every soul through the cycle of incarnation in accordance with cyclic and karmic law. And it says that in order for every divine soul to acquire an independent conscious existence, has to have A, pass through every elemental form of the phenomenal world of that manvantara, and B, acquired individuality or consciousness, first by natural impulse and then by self-induced, self-devised efforts, and always checked by its karma. And in this way, it helps the ego to ascend through all degrees of intelligence, from the lowest to the highest manas, from mineral plant up to the holiest archangel, also referred to as Dhyani Buddha. Further, the third fundamental proposition says that there is no privileges or special gifts in man, except those won by his own effort owned by the own ego through personal effort and merit throughout a long series of metempsychosis and reincarnations.
Thank you. Today we have a talk on the aphorisms of karma, and we'll have it now.
Oh, okay. So yeah, this talk is on karma, specifically on the aphorisms on karma. And just to go into detail, a little more detail into some of them, I've only chosen the first 8. And this way we can just explore them in a little more depth and see how they relate to each other. So we begin with a statement Mr. Judge says he received these aphorisms. They were given to him by his teachers, among them H.P. Blavatsky. Some were written down and some were communicated in other ways. And to him, they were declared to be from manuscripts, not now accessible to the general public. And each one he submitted for his judgment and reason. And they, through his, thought and through experience, approved themselves to his reason after serious consideration. And so he shares them with the hope that they will help fellow theosophists. So the first one is that there's no karma unless there's a being to make or feel its effects. This is because karma means action and reaction, or cause and effect. In the context of karma, cause and effect are not 2 separate things. They're more like the 2 opposite poles of one and the same thing. Since a cause is required for karmic effects, and a cause can't take place without an agent or a being to make the action, there's no karma without a being to make action or feel the reaction. If we look to the first fundamental proposition of theosophy, excuse me, we find that everything in the manifested universe originates from the same source, an absolute abstract and eternal substance principle that antecedes all manifested conditioned being. It has been called the rootless root of all that was, is, or ever shall be, and is devoid of all attributes and is essentially without relation to any finite being. Therefore, it has been called beingness rather than being. So at this high level, there cannot be said to be a being. All is one, and it is beingness. There's no differentiation in this absolute abstract reality. So everything that manifests in the universe originates from this singular, all-encompassing substance principle. Everything comes from this one source, and everything is a spark of it. This fundamental reality, both impersonal and pervasive, not only gives birth to the cosmos, but also underlies it as the purest essence of thought. It's the same as that consciousness which wells up in each of us as the I am I consciousness. And this source connects all of existence, weaving the fabric of the cosmos and kindling the spark of self-awareness in every being through the process of self-evolution. It doesn't do it itself. It's kind of a mystery how, you know, evolution begins with the logos. But this is by way of trying to separate this absolute abstract principle from, well, not separate it. It's part of everything and we can't exclude it. And it is the source, but it doesn't cause anything. That's why it's called the causeless cause. But to continue, any aspect of existence at this stage can only be like a symbol of this unconditioned absolute reality. So as soon as anything within the universe can be said to be cognized, then it represents a later stage in evolution when duality ensues. And cause and effect is one such pair of dualities, as are light and dark, heat and cold, spirit and matter, etc. Each duality can be cognized only in relation to its opposite, and each is an aspect of the one unity in which the two are synthesized. The secret doctrine tells us this absolute reality can be symbolized in two aspects, as absolute abstract space, representing subjectivity, the one thing which no human mind can either exclude from any conception, nor really conceive of by itself, and absolute abstract motion. This latter aspect of the one reality, absolute abstract motion, or unconditioned consciousness, is also symbolized by the term the great breath, or the periodical appearance of the universe. The great breath assumes the character of pre-cosmic ideation, which is the origin of consciousness, and pre-cosmic root substance, which is the origin of the various grades of matter. Essentially, this duality of spirit and matter are what make life possible in a body. One could not exist without the other. Cosmic substance would remain an empty abstraction, and no emergence of consciousness could ensue without the informing cosmic ideation. Likewise, cosmic ideation would be an empty abstraction if it were not for cosmic substance to provide a form. It's only through a vehicle of matter that consciousness can well up as the sense of I am I, and a physical basis is necessary to focus a ray of the universal mind at a certain stage of complexity. So the aphorism said there could be no karma without a being to make it or feel its effects. So where does a being come into the picture? What this first fundamental is saying is that as soon as there there is said to be being. Wait, as soon as manifestation or evolution gets to the point of duality, only then can there be said to be a being. And as soon as there is a being, we know there is at the same time a field of operation for that being, because spirit and matter are the two sides of the same thing. So until this stage of evolution is reached, there can be no action, reaction, or karma. This is why I said that karma operates all the way up to the level of Brahma, and that he is like the creator being. And it's at this point when there is manifestation composed of both spirit and matter, that the law of karma can be said to be in operation. So karma is not just a law of physics, but of metaphysics. Aphorism number 2. Karma is the adjustment of effects flowing from causes, during which the being upon whom and through whom that adjustment is effected experiences pain or pleasure. Karma is understood as the law of ethical causation in that it adjusts the effects to the cause, ensuring that every action or thought has a corresponding consequence. Every effect is not only proportionate to its cause, but is also in its retributive aspect. Therefore, what we might perceive as pain or pleasure is merely the return of our own actions, essentially teaching us and guiding our evolution at the same time. So this perspective of karma encourages self-awareness and responsibility. It signifies that one's present condition, whether joyful or painful, is shaped by our own past actions. To give an example, we're all familiar with the natural laws describing the physical world. We understand that if we jump from a high place, the force of gravity will cause us to suffer the pain of a broken bone. But we don't think gravity is punishing us for committing a crime and that we deserve the suffering. The pain and suffering come from the laws which govern the action of bodies moving through space-time. There is no punitive justice system being enforced. Again, if a child, for example, places their hand on the stove and suffers the pain of a burn, we don't think the child deserves to suffer. The child's ignorance of the laws of nature caused their action, and the operation of the natural laws caused the suffering. There's no blame or punishment being inflicted, and the child hasn't committed a crime. So rather than seeing suffering as something wrong with us, the theosophical view is that when we experience suffering, we're in an unnatural state, and we have initiated an action that brings painful consequences. Neither painful nor pleasurable consequences are inherently good or bad. It's our attachment to pleasure and our aversion to pain, our inability to let go of either one, that's the problem. And this is where people tend to think of a personal God as some agency that doles out pleasure and pain. But it is really our actions that cause the feelings associated of pleasure and pain with the adjustment of the cause and the effect. So what we need to do is to understand the laws of the universe, like karma and cycles. Aphorism 3. Karma is an undeviating and unerring tendency in the universe to restore equilibrium, and it operates incessantly. So we sort of just touched on that, that it's a force that it's not being punitive, strictly speaking, it's restoring harmony. So when thinking about karma as that force which restores equilibrium, it can help to use this visualization from the key to theosophy. Think now of a pond. A stone falls in the water and creates disturbing waves. The waves oscillate backwards and forwards till at last, owing to the operation of what physicists call the law of the dissipation of energy, they are brought to rest and the water returns to its condition of calm tranquility. Similarly, all action on every plane produces disturbance in the balanced harmony of the universe. And the vibrations so produced will continue to roll backwards and forwards if its area is limited till equilibrium is restored. But since each such disturbance starts from some particular point, it is clear that equilibrium and harmony can only be restored by the reconverging to that same point of all the forces which were set in motion from it. And here you have proof that the consequence of a man's deeds and thoughts must all react upon himself with the same force with which they were set in motion. So the idea that karma does not simply punish or reward, but aims to restore harmony and balance in the universe. Consider that every action, thought, or decision is like the stone thrown into the pond. Each generates a series of consequences or ripples that extend far beyond the initial point of impact. In our lives, these ripples can manifest as the outcomes of our actions affecting ourselves and others. Over time, these effects can seem to spread out and dissipate, but like the waves in the pond, they eventually reflect back towards their origin. This return is not just a mere echo, it's the universe's way of restoring balance and ensuring that the energies released by one's actions are reconciled. So something that happened at some point in the past can seem to reappear, and this reappearance is the echo or that karma returning. So the pain and pleasure we experience are not seen as arbitrary reward or punishment, but as the natural outcome of one's actions, thoughts, and desires. In this view, pain may arise from previous actions that have disturbed harmony, while pleasure could be the result of actions that contribute to or maintain this harmony. The echo we experience, however, might actually manifest in a more complex manner than this example seems to illustrate. It's infinitely more complex when we take into account all the other people with whom we have influence and contact. But what this example emphasizes is the interconnectivity of not just our actions, but all actions. Nothing occurs in isolation. Each individual's actions contribute to the collective state of the world in a universal sense. Thus, the disturbance one creates through negative actions or intentions will eventually reverberate back, urging a return to a state of moral and spiritual equilibrium. The idea that these forces will reconverge at the point of origin, where the action was initiated by someone, suggests a personalized journey of growth and understanding for each one of us. Put into context, each person, through experiencing the consequences of their own deeds, is provided with opportunities for self-reflection and correction. And this personal aspect of karma underscores the teaching that we're responsible for our choices and the state of balance in our lives. Aphorism number 4. The apparent stoppage of this restoration to equilibrium is due to the necessary adjustment of disturbance at some other spot, place, or focus, which is visible only to the yogi, to the sage, or the perfect seer. There is therefore no stoppage, but only a hiding from view. Causes set in motion may originate on a plane to which we cannot, while in our body, easily perceive. But the sage or the perfect seer, having spiritually open senses, may be able to trace a cause back to its origin. We can deepen our understanding of karma by acknowledging that the forces set in motion by our actions might sometimes appear to be unresolved or stagnant, but in reality, they are continuously working towards equilibrium in ways that are not immediately visible to us or to an ordinary observer. And this suggests that while we see the effects of our actions within the scope of our limited perception, much of the cosmic adjustment process occurs beyond our direct sight and understanding. So this hidden dimension of karmic restoration is perceivable, but only by those who have attained to a higher state of spiritual awareness, such as yogis, sages, or seers. And note she says, perfect seer, one who can, you know, have a full open inner sight. So these individuals, like yogis, sages, and seers, through their advanced spiritual development and inner sight, can perceive the subtler movements of karma across different planes of existence. Now, to give an example, if a person performs an action that seems to have unresolved negative repercussions, it may appear that the karmic cycle is halted. We don't maybe see that person receiving the effects of their action. But from a higher perspective, the necessary adjustments might be taking place in another aspect of that person's life or at a different level of consciousness, essentially hidden from our personal view. So this could involve the adjustment of disturbances created on other planes of existence or from a former existence, but they are interconnected with our actions and our present existence, because all karma is, because we're all tied together. So all of our karma is essentially tied together to some extent. So all of these workings out are not visible to us, or maybe even comprehensible to us in our present state. But to the seer or sage whose point of view extends to other states of consciousness, the workings out of karma through cycles makes perfect sense. The universe's workings are intricate and interconnected beyond our perception. And acknowledging this, having this perspective, encourages us to trust in these universal laws to some extent, because we can't see the entire harmonious balance that governs all of existence. Theosophy recommends, however, that we never take anything for granted, but to the best of our ability to test, check, and verify the veracity of any tenet or principle offered in the philosophy. So whether we place our trust in these laws or not in no way affects the working out of them. These laws are not dependent on our trust or acceptance, but such trust and acceptance can help us make sense of the events in our lives within a broader philosophical context of living a life that adheres to an order and a progression, to an inner consistency and a balance. The law of karma, much like the law of physics, continues its course regardless of human awareness or understanding. And this realization can bring a shift in one's perspective, because it implies a universe governed by order and justice is inherent in its very structure, rather than one contingent on our desires or beliefs. The acknowledgement that these laws work autonomously encourages a philosophical stance, and that is one that values alignment with the underlying universal harmony. Trusting in these laws does not alter their operation, but can influence how we choose to live. And this is what Mr. Judge meant when he said that after serious consideration of these aphorisms, they approved themselves to his reason. He continued to test, check, and verify these aphorisms in his day-to-day life. And so we can, by aligning ourselves with karmic principles, cultivate a life of moral integrity and spiritual awareness, fostering a deeper sense of peace and fulfillment. This also allows for more proactive engagement with challenges and opportunities. Understanding that every action contributes to one's karmic footprint, so to speak, encourages thoughtful and conscious behavior. It inspires us to act with consideration of the broader impacts of our deeds, with the aim to contribute positively as much as we can to the cosmic balance rather than to disrupt it. If our deeds are undertaken with a motive to unselfishly benefit others and to acknowledge and meet one's karma with courage and compassion, then the desire to dispense with one's duties as a portion of the universal duty, this position taken will align with the universal perspective which underlies the law of karma and cycles. Aphorism number 5. Karma operates on all things and beings from the minutest conceivable atom up to Brahma. Proceeding in the 3 worlds of men, gods, and the elemental beings, no spot in the manifested universe is exempt from its sway. This aphorism harkens kind of back to the first one in a sense where we explored when being supervenes in the manifested cosmos. But what this passage also tells us is that we're not alone, because no spot in the manifested universe is exempt from the field of karmic operation. When so-called bad or punitive karma precipitates in our lives, we must remember it is not just our karma alone to suffer, because we are all interconnected with each other and with nature. It has been said that the karma of each is the karma of all. So the more we can cultivate a compassionate awareness of our interconnectedness, through practice we can become more mindful of our moment-to-moment choices and our moment-to-moment reactions. It is through this sifting of experience that we come to understand karma better and how it works. By choosing this perspective, we encourage long-term thinking, not thinking of ourselves as this body and what we desire in this moment, but instead thinking of how can I meet this karma for the restoration of equilibrium for myself and the others involved, and even all others not directly involved. Considering others and considering how we can help to restore equilibrium is the essence of ethical integrity. It invites a deeper exploration of our role within the collective consciousness. The second portal in the voice of the silence is Shila, the key of harmony in word and act, the key that counterbalances the cause and the effect and leaves no further room for karmic action. So this harmony must not just be considered in its individual aspect of harmony within our present life, but must be considered in its universal aspect of collective harmony. How will my actions resolve this situation for the benefit of all? It's a perspective that takes many lives into consideration, and that also expands our mind to remember that we are not just this one life, this one personality. Another possible realization from dwelling on this aphorism is that we begin to understand our role, our position in the cosmic order. By consciously placing ourselves as agents on a ladder of being, which incorporates the highest being, Brahma, as well as the lowest, like other beings like elementals, gives one a sense of unity with the all. Because we are part of a continuum that includes all forms of life, from the smallest atom up to the highest beings like Brahma. And this point of view encourages a broader sense of responsibility. We begin to understand that our actions reverberate throughout the cosmic hierarchy. It also incorporates, or could incorporate, a sense of altruism and compassion, since we understand that our karmic journey is linked to all others. And with an awareness of our place in this vast cosmic structure, we're more likely to live ethically, basing our actions on universal values of truth, justice, and balance. And aligning ourselves this way helps to give us the moral courage we need to uphold our highest principles, even when it's difficult, knowing that such integrity also aligns with cosmic law. Aphorism number 6. Karma is not subject to time, and therefore he who knows what is the ultimate division of time in this universe knows karma. A Mahatma, or someone who understands these profound cycles or the fundamental nature of time itself, will have insight into the workings of karma from the most minute to the most vast. By seeing beyond the immediate to the interconnected web of causes and effects, such a Mahatma would understand karma's intricate workings across the span of what we perceive as the past, present, and future, but all in one. So time is not a barrier to the working out of karma, and a perfect seer or Mahatma who can see on planes beyond what we do would I'm trying to say time would not be a barrier. They could see how karma plays out over a series of lifetimes. HPB and the Mahatmas had insights such as these, and she gives hints in The Secret Doctrine of the karma and legacy of races in ages long past, of its maturation among peoples either on the globe now or to come in successive ages. She pointed to a knowledge outside of the chronology of history as we know it. You know, she would talk about like Lemuria or the coming fifth race. She gives us the sense that we are not only aware of our immediate surroundings and our recent historical past, but she's able to articulate karmic cycles from before the separation of the sexes, before man was embodied in a cloth of skin, when he was more ethereal and less physical. And this is the type of perspective of which this aphorism speaks, because there's karma precipitating now, and then there's karma that's held over awaiting precipitation for the beings involved to become embodied again to meet that karma. Aphorism number 7. For all other men, karma is in its essential nature unknown and unknowable. So this is a continuation of the last aphorism. But this reflects the idea that for most of us, the scope and intricacy of karma is beyond our comprehension. Keep in mind the term karma involves not only the visible effects of our actions, but also the intentions and the motives behind them, as well as their interconnection with the actions and intentions of all other beings and how they all align in the cosmic order. Since the true breadth of causes and effects are so vast and complex, fully understanding karma is beyond ordinary human awareness or intellect. And while this acknowledges the limitations of our human perspective in grasping the entirety of cosmic justice and balance, we can have this limitation now, but this shouldn't stop us from doing our best to align with that greater cosmic stream. It's only by stepping into it that we will gradually come to a greater and greater understanding of it. Lastly, for this talk is aphorism number 8, also a continuation, but its action may be known by calculation from cause to effect, and this calculation is possible because the effect is wrapped up in and is not succedent to the cause. So while the full nature of karma is unfathomable, it is possible to discern patterns of karmic cause and effect through observation and reasoning. Since the effect is inherent and contained within the cause, not merely following it, This implies an intrinsic and non-linear relationships between actions and their results. Through careful observation and understanding of circumstances and their outcomes, one can infer karmic principles. And this doesn't mean predicting a specific outcome in a deterministic way, but understanding the nature of action, the nature of attachments to results, and the likely consequences based on those intentions, and the three qualities of nature that Krishna refers to in the Bhagavad Gita. So, like Mr. Judge, we want to use our reason and think along the lines of karma and test and verify and check it with our experience as much as we can. So in practical terms, these aphorisms invite us to approach life and decision-making modestly and humbly. Because by recognizing the limits of our understanding, it encourages us to be mindful and to have integrity and compassion, act with an awareness of the potential breadth and depth of the impact of our actions, because it reverberates through that ladder of being. It also encourages us to engage in a reasoned and meditative approach to our actions, to really study them and to go over them in our mind as one possible avenue of meditation. And by doing this, it will deepen our intuitions, and it'll deepen our grasp of universal principles and guide us towards living more harmoniously. Lastly is a quote from Mr. Judge. Assert to yourself that it is not of the slightest consequence what you were yesterday, but in every moment, strive for that moment, and the results will follow themselves. For as each moment is and at once is not, it must follow that if we think of the past, we forget the present. And while we forget, the moments fly by us, making more past. Then regret nothing, not even the greatest follies of your life, for they are gone, and you are to work in the present, which is both past and future at once. So then, with the absolute knowledge that all your limitations are due to karma, past or in this life, and with a firm reliance ever upon karma as the only judge, which will be good or bad as you make it yourself, you can stand anything that may happen and feel serene, despite the occasional despondencies which all feel, but which the light of truth always dispels. So that concludes the talk on the first 8 aphorisms on karma. And we want to open it up to questions, comments, thoughts. Yeah, Cyrus.
So in theosophy, we have taught that thought is a true plane of action, right? So if you look at the first aphorism and use the pond analogy, every thought that we entertain in our minds as a ripple effect can impact others around us as well too, right? And so is it fair to assume that? I mean, could we talk about action as what we actually say or do, but also on the, also as we form our thoughts about things around us, that also is generating karma. Is that a safe assumption?
Yes. Yeah, and that's very true, and that aspect comes out in some of the further aphorisms on karma, but very much thought is a plane of action. Thought puts intention, affects elementals, carries a force or an energy, and on the mental plane certainly affects ourselves, our body, all the cells in it. But that thought aligns with others who are thinking similarly, and may affect others who aren't, depending on the intention. And so, yeah, I think that's very true. And that aspect comes out in some of the further aphorisms on karma, but very much thought is a plane of action. Thought puts intention, affects elementals, carries a force or an energy, and on the mental plane certainly affects ourselves, our body, all the cells in it. But that thought aligns with others who are thinking similarly, and may affect others who aren't, depending on you know, the nature of the thought. So for sure, thought is a field of action, and we should very much apply these principles of karma as much as we can to our thoughts. Yeah, they
Thank you.
affect all others, and they could, as this idea said that we're all interconnected, it can affect others in the ladder of being. So yeah, it almost feels like, oh my gosh, I can't comprehend how to act, how to think properly, like every thought. It's just incalculable how you know, all the effects that are produced, because we're constantly in action. You know, that comes out in the Bhagavad Gita, that it's not possible to cease acting. So what we can do is the best we can in every moment, and to think along the lines of universal brotherhood and you know, ethical principles, like how, you know, like the golden rule, how we would want to be treated, to treat others as if they were ourselves, because they are, in a sense.
Yep. Thank you.
I noticed that people who believe in a external deity who is sort of in charge of the causation and effect, not causation, but events in your life. So these people don't believe necessarily in karma, that your deeds will have an effect in your life, but do believe in whatever is happening in their lives, it's because a deity has caused them, and whether they're good or bad, they accept the whatever circumstances they're living through, and with a forgiving mindset. I do find sometimes accepting karma is challenging, knowing that, although I know because of the theosophical teachings that I caused whatever circumstances I'm living through right now, and whatever it's awaiting to precipitate in the future, it was caused by me. It doesn't mean that by knowing this, it's not challenging. It is. What do you think of that comparison I just made, that the people who believe in someone as some deity, a god, presenting them with challenges, that they are often very forgiving?
Well, excuse me. Yeah, a lot of people do. I think they can't fathom why bad things happen to them. So, you know, this idea of a personal God agency sort of, you know, testing them in some way is very popular. It's difficult, you know, it's really difficult to meet, you know, difficult circumstances, and it does make one feel like, well, what did I do to deserve this? It's very, very, very challenging. But the personal God idea is, you know, I guess it's maybe a crutch of some sort, perhaps, because there's no real basis for it. It doesn't, you know, reason can determine that it doesn't make a lot of sense that, you know, one being could create all this, and why it would be unfair for someone to be born at such a disadvantage compared to another. So it does fall apart at a certain point, but the emphasis that sometimes religions play with forgiving is generally a good thing. I think it's easy for us to blame others for our difficulties in some way, to place blame. And I think the idea of forgiveness is to sort of counteract that. It's not helpful to place blame. But why theosophy is important is because, it frames everything in a reasoned way, the structure of the universe and how karma is a result of our own actions. It's not due to somebody else. There's no blame. There's no punitive aspect, really. It was like the example of the person jumping off a high place. Gravity is a law of the universe in physics, and so is karma, but there's no blame. It's a ignorance and a misunderstanding of how these laws operate, that we act in such a way to cause ourselves negative consequences. We're jumping off high places, so to speak, and meeting retributive karma is very, very difficult and painful. It can cause people to really shift their perspective. But realizing that it is due to something, some action we did, and to have compassion for ourselves, because we did it out of ignorance. We didn't understand. We were breaking how we broke the law of harmony. And the more we think along those lines, the more we'll, align our thought with those laws and better understand them. It'll take many, many lifetimes, but men who have gone through this, who are the Mahatmas, they have, understood it and written it down, codified it, so to speak, and present it in ways that is helpful for us at our stage, like HPB and the Secret Doctrine and all her works, like the Key to Theosophy and stuff, really help to explain it as best it can be for us at the point we're at.
Thank you.
Sure, I hope that helps. Yeah, so karma is sort of like a force, and it's action and reaction, it's cause and effect all in one. It's difficult to sort of encompass all of that in our thought when we're just going through our day-to-day life and trying to meet what happens to us as best we can. Just have to remember not to take anything personally. If something negative comes from another person, they may have been involved in the original action. They are an agent of karma. On some level, we should be glad that we were able to meet it and to try and meet it in the best frame of mind that we can, thinking universally and, with compassion for everyone involved, including ourselves. We're sorry that this happened to ourselves and this other person, and how can we meet it with courage and meet it with compassion?
So does that mean that if we are firmly rooted in the law of karma, we tend to become more responsible individuals, right? So we know that we are in charge of our own destiny.
Yes, we're writing the story.
Yep, exactly.
as we live from day to day, and as we think, so we act. So by thinking of karma and higher principles and aligning with them, it's going to change our trajectory.
Yep.
As Mr. Judge talks about with the analogy of the bow and the arrow, you have to aim a little higher because the arrow naturally comes down a little before it hits the target. So aim as high as we can, do the best as we can, align ourselves as often as possible. It may not be possible in every moment, but also the idea that using action and reaction as a seed for meditation, like Plato said in his school, Pythagoras, excuse me, said to go over what happened every step, go back through your day, every step before you go to sleep, and to analyze it and rejoice in the good, and to like understand what we could have done better if we didn't do something well. And to use this as a meditation will help us to concentrate and look for patterns to better understand karma. So we may not come to a full understanding, but we can deepen it step by step.
Just one more question. So aphorism 6 says that karma is not subject to time. So let's say, you know, we are around 7, end of Manvantara, and those egos that have not reached perfection still have karma. Will the karma ripen in the next Manvantara when you know, after Pralaya, when we reawaken, those who have an unexpended karma, will it carry over to the next Manvantara? Can we assume that, or is that how we would understand?
That is how this student understands it.
Okay.
That is not subject to time. And if the karmic consequences, you know, magnetically, there's a magnetic connection with those other egos, so they will be drawn back together. The circumstances of the conditioned realm in which we exist will precipitate, you know, meeting up again to feel those effects. So yeah, it's really amazing to think, you know, time, it's hard to comprehend, but if we just remember that you know, it comes in cycles or waves, we may not meet all of it all at once, but something from the distant past or the recent past will still come into our circles. So as we meet each day, as we meet what happens to us, we have to try and meet it as best we can, as was said, to have compassion for ourselves and for others, because it's difficult to reconcile all those actions so that we don't make another reaction, so that we meet the karma and close it off, so to speak.
Yeah, I think you're alluding to the Pythagorean nightly review. It's really spot on. We have to get in the habit of doing a self-audit every day, you know, so we go through a self-examination, hopefully put ourselves on a better path to generating better karma for everyone, ourselves and others too. So
yeah, and at first it's hard to, like, what did we do earlier today? But the more you do it, the easier it gets to, and then a flood of memory and detail comes back, maybe too much. But yeah, well said. Thank you. So that concludes the talk portion. Close off the recording, and then we'll take